younger people, like my kids, which are in their 26s to like 40 years old, they'll look at some of these movie stars and they go, it's a good movie, but they're too old to be in it. I guess when you start getting, like in your 40s, or I should say 50s, 60s and stuff, you don't notice that.
Right, and because it's people we've been watching for years.
Oh, yeah. Like Halloween, for example, some of the people in that show, regardless, the physical condition they're in, you sit there and think, wow, she's still in it. And I don't know.
But to me, the Halloween film they did in 2018 was absolutely fine. Jamie Lee Curtis did a fantastic job.
She's a great actor.
Right.
Actress, I should say.
Yep, she's a great actress. She did a fantastic job picking up as the character that she played in the 70s.
So how long do you think they can push that? Do you think they can do another couple more of those?
They plan on it, and I honestly hope she's in both of them.
Interesting. Of any of the horror movies out there, older ones, what ones would you like to see come out with a sequel?
Which ones would I like to see with a sequel as far as older ones go? That's actually a good question. I could actually go with a sequel for Gremlins.
Yeah, I could see that.
I have a kind of a soft spot for monster movies. I love slasher movies, but I have another soft spot for monster movies. Like Gremlins, Ghoulies, Critters, things like that, where the monsters are little.
Yeah, but boy, those little things could really cut you up good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how about the Leprechaun movies?
The Leprechaun movies are actually not that bad. Now, some of them were super cheesy. Leprechaun 1 and 2 was good. We started veering off course a little bit after that. But Sci-Fi actually produced Leprechaun Returns. It's not the same actor that played the original Leprechaun, of course, but it went back to the original plot line, and it was actually really good.
I've never seen it. When was it shown?
I think it was last year. Sci-Fi actually produced it, and that's one of the things Sci-Fi has done pretty well lately. And it just kind of stood out in my mind as something that Sci-Fi could keep doing.
Well, long as it isn't their Shark Fest movies. Okay, come on. I get, stuff like Leprechaun and, some of these other, older ones. Or Pumpkinhead would be a good, I don't know if they ever made a sequel to Pumpkinhead.
They actually did. They made a couple of sequels to Pumpkinhead, and they were actually all pretty good, too. I could see another Pumpkinhead sequel as something easily that Sci-Fi could do.
Yeah, that would be good. What was the one where the guy, if you said Bloody Mary 13 times in the mirror, this monster-like human would come in and get you? I'm trying to think of the name of the movie.
Was it Candyman?
Candyman, that's it. They're actually going to make a sequel to that with the original Candyman.
Yep, and I'm actually pretty excited for that. I think that's something that we could actually revisit, and it would cause some interest in that franchise. I think Candyman would be a good one to start with.
And can you tell the listeners a little bit about Candyman?
Candyman's actually based on an urban legend. I mean, you say the man's name 3 times in the mirror, and he was murdered unjustly a long time ago. The actual Candyman's a vengeful spirit that comes back. So if you utter his name 3 times in a mirror, what happens is this guy comes back and wreaks havoc and kills you. I mean, it's basically a movie that's based off urban legend. And it's just loosely based off the Bloody Mary urban legend.
Yeah, that was really scary, too. So I hope they keep it the same way when they do, a sequel to it. That was one of the movies I had a hard time, to be honest with you, sitting in the theater and watching it. I actually would get scared.
Yeah, and the whole thing with the bees. Bees freak me out as a general rule, having been allergic to them as a child. So watching this guy covered with bees while he's talking actually scared me quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. Well, the way the future is going, you won't have to worry about bees much longer.
Yeah, and I hope the future changes, because the bee is actually a pretty important being.
Only if you want to eat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or if you want to breathe, considering, it pollinates trees that produce oxygen.
Yeah, I know even where I live here, like 2 years ago, we didn't have much bees, and I planted a garden, and I just saying, well, is anything going to happen? Because nothing was getting pollinated. It was, really scary.
Right, and I've seen quite a few bees here recently. So, I'm not sure that they're on any kind of resurgence, or they're off the endangered list yet, but I've seen quite a few. And it's the actual right type. It's the bumblebee, so I've seen them pretty plentiful in bushes and things lately.
One of the older movies, I don't know if you remember it, The Killer Wasp.
Actually, I think I do remember that.
And you know what?
Was it
go ahead.
Was it a black and white flick?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I think I remember that. It was actually really good.
Yeah. And I think was done, in the 60s, late 60s, I think that movie was made.
Yeah, I think it was early to late 60s, I think. It was actually a really good film.
Yeah, now it's coming true about killer wasps, because they just was in the news here recently, a new species of super wasp that are really, really aggressive, and you don't need a whole bunch of them to, sting you, to kill you, only a couple of them.
Right, and that's actually a terrifying thing, because that's the evolution of something that's defending itself.
Well, I guess maybe too many people getting cans of wasp spray and killing them, and some of them surviving. Even in my house here last year, not this year, up on our deck, one of my kids said, "Oh, you got to see this." And I go out there, and there was a wasp nest, like it was like size of a beach ball.
Right.
Almost that big. I never seen one that big in my life. And I made a mistake. I got a can of wasp spray and I started spraying. I tell you, thousands of those suckers came out.
Right. And I've seen a few nests like that around here, and I just kind of avoid them. Definitely avoid those.
Yeah, they should make a remake of that movie, actually. I think that, because the way things are going with Earth changes, I think some of those old movies, could be, redone. Or like Worms. Remember Worms?
Worms, yep, I remember that. And I remember a movie called Them, with the giant ants.
Yeah, wasn't it they were out in some out in the bog or something like this, a group of people?
Yeah, I think so, and it was just radioactive ants, and they were huge.
Yeah, some of the old movies, they were, I hate to say it, I don't know which movie it was I watched last night, but it was about this. It's supposed to have been in Mexico, a giant tarantula, and it would eat people and all that stuff. But I tell you, when you watch it, it was really hard to watch because the special effects were so poorly bad that it kind of took it away from being a scary horror movie to like a comedy.
Right, and I love older movies like that, though. Like the old Godzilla movies where you look for the zipper. Those are fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. Or the creature from the Black Lagoon, when he stands up there and he turns and you can tell exactly where the zipper is. But you know what? They didn't have the technology, like they do now. Let's face it, some of the masks they can produce, you could put it on and become a 90-year-old man, and you could be walking down the street and everybody's going to think you're a 90-year-old man. So, I mean, when it comes to making monsters and stuff like that, it makes it look so much more realistic.
Right. CGI and special effects have come such a long way in such a short time. I remember in the 90s where CGI was absolutely terrible in movies. Because it would cut to a scene where somebody was firing a missile or a rocket or something like that, and you could clearly tell that that was not part of the scenery.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, you can think a TV show, Stargate, is the one that really perfected a lot of those special effects. And they won a lot of awards through the years of the special effects. But, you know, nowadays, you know, they don't even have to go out and use, you know, like M16s or real guns. They can use, like, airsoft guns, and they can put out the fake flame. They can, the blood and the explosions that all look real.
Right. But, you know, to me, there's still no substitute for practical effects. Practical effects are the stuff that people sit and actually take time with. They sit and mold the masks, make the fake blood, load the prop guns with the explosions, you know, things of that nature. And there's just no substitute for practical effects because, I mean, it's part of the scenery.
Oh, yeah. You know, a gentleman I had, Ron Fitzgerald, he plays in a lot of horror movies. And he was telling me one time he was on my show that they were making a movie where he gets shot up and all this stuff, and they had this like little hose that would go down his his pant leg and up to a certain area, and the prop guy had put in too much fake blood, and he said they had to reshoot the scene because it was like gallons of blood coming out. But you know, when they did stuff like that, he said it was so realistic. Other than, you know, you'd have to take a shower afterwards, rather than having it, you know, done digitally.
Right. And see, I think if a movie uses more of that, the movie looks 100 times better than if you're using CGI. Like if you're doing a movie like the new Godzilla, use a ton of CGI because you're going to need it. You're making a giant monster. However, if you're doing a movie to scale with like zombies or slashers, things like that, where it's close-up things, practical effects work so much better than digital effects.
Well, yeah, even like The Walking Dead, when you see this blood going, you know, when you hit them with a sword or whatever, you can instantly tell, hey, it looks somewhat real, but you can see it's all fake. I rather see like the original ones, you know, like where the zombies were all covered with blood and dripping, and on the floor there was real blood, fake blood, but it was there, right. and it scared you more. Now it's, hey, God, let's face it, how much cheaper is it to digitally just throw it in?
Honestly, to digitally throw something in, I'm not sure that it would be any cheaper, because it takes a team of people to actually create these digital effects, and they don't charge you by what it, I guess they don't charge you by what it is. I'm not sure. I don't do it for a living, and someone can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they charge you for the amount of time it takes to do these effects, which makes them way more expensive than just going out, taking some corn syrup, red and green food dye, and making a gallon of fake blood.
Yeah, but I remember, like Ron Fitzgerald said, where he was sitting on his car and he got all shut up and like it malfunctioned, where it put out, you know, like 3 or 4 times the amount of fake blood all over everywhere. So then he had to go shower. He had to go and put on another, you know, set of, you know, costume. And then he said it malfunctioned a second and third time. So, you know, you have all these, the film take on the crew, and I don't know, it's a toss-up. But, you know, again, seeing real blood splattering around, I think it just makes the movie so much more realistic. Hey, Nick, our time is up. I want to thank you for coming back on Night Dreams Talk Radio. You got anything special you're going to be doing this Halloween?
Do I have anything special I'm doing this Halloween? Actually, I think this Halloween, I have a friend that's having a Halloween party. We may go to that. But other than that, sitting around and watching horror films and just enjoying myself.
You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself some nice dark beer. I'm going to sit back and just watch what I can find, on the cable channels, and kind of just enjoy all